Chapter 276, This Brat Bullied You? However, even though her mouth was still as hard as before, Jianyun's heart was filled with apprehension. It was an inexplicable feeling of unease. In the silence, Jianyun noticed from the corner of her eye that Huo Liancheng had already walked to the entrance. Her hand quietly clenched beside her, and her eyes also closed. She heard the sound of the door opening. He was finally going to leave. Jianyun only felt a surge of disappointment in her heart, but at the same time she heaved a sigh of relief. It was over. Was everything finally over? It was good that it was over. This kind of torture, she could not bear it anymore. These days, she actually felt more pain than when she was betrayed by Shu Haiyang and Lin Lanlan at the same time. This feeling was very bad. What are you thinking about? In the silence, Jianyun heard Huo Liancheng's voice. She suddenly opened her eyes. Shock flashed across her big watery eyes. Why hasn't he left yet? You really want me to leave? Huo Liancheng asked with a frown. Why? Why can't you follow your heart and accept me? At this moment, Huo Liancheng had already walked in front of Jianyun. He lowered his head and looked at her. Because I hate you. Jianyun lowered her eyes and said softly. But I liked you. Huo Liancheng said in a deep voice. Jianyun suddenly felt her nose ache. Tears rolled down her face again. She wiped her face with the back of her hand as if she was venting her anger. She suddenly looked up at Huo Liancheng and said angrily, You don't like me at all. What you like is your sense of superiority as a man. Isn't it because I'm dirty? Then why are you still pestering me? I will never forget what you said. In fact, in your heart, I am not even a prostitute. A prostitute? You're going to buy hundreds of millions of diamonds for a prostitute? You will spend 6 years searching for a prostitute, pampering her and protecting her, afraid that she will be harmed in the slightest? Would you reveal an excited smile for a prostitute, not regretting your reckless search for all these years? Would you? Huo Liancheng grabbed Jianyun's shoulder and said fiercely. Yes, so you have gotten the reward. I also left as you wished. Why are you still looking for me? I don't have anything else that you can spend time and effort on. Jianyun screamed. I know I am not worth that much money. Tell me, how many times do you need to sleep with me to be able to pay? I will accompany you. What she hated the most was Huo Liancheng's humiliating words that night. He said that he had pampered her for so long. Even if they had to separate, he had to get something in return. He said that it was not her first time, so she should not pretend to be a virgin. Jianyun still remembered these words until now, and was so angry that her mirth sprang. You really want to sleep with me? Huo Liancheng's handsome face was dark, and his fierce eyes were full of storms. He grabbed Jianyun's chin and narrowed his eyes, saying word by word, All right, I want you to sleep with me for the rest of your life. Why? Jianyun glared at him. We have a marriage certificate. It is only right and proper for me to sleep with you. Huo Liancheng said coldly. Jianyun was suddenly stunned. She looked at Huo Liancheng. The tears on her face had not dried yet. Her big eyes were filled with confusion. For a moment, she could not understand the meaning of Huo Liancheng's words. Don't you understand? Huo Liancheng pinched Jianyun's face and suddenly kissed her lips. He tossed and turned, and suddenly his voice became low. I love you. I love you. What is your heart made of? Why can't you see what I did? Jianyun pursed her lips and turned her head away. I know that I am a bastard. I said some stupid things without thinking. However, no one is perfect. I'm not a saint and I will make mistakes. It is because I love you so much, that I care so much. Huo Liancheng's tone softened a little. He held Jianyun in his arms and whispered in her ear. He apologized to her. I am sorry. Can you forgive me? Jianyun still lowered her head and did not speak. She had cried too much earlier and was still sobbing at this moment. How can you forgive me? Huo Liancheng hugged Jianyun, and a corner of his heart seemed to collapse. It was so soft that he could not bear it. He picked up Jianyun's hand and greeted his face. Hit me. As long as you are not angry, you can do whatever you want. Jianyun was caught off guard and slapped him. She was shocked and quickly clenched her fingers. She also pulled her hand back. Why should I hit you? If I hit you, my hand will hurt. Huo Liancheng's eyes lit up when he saw Jianyun was finally willing to speak. The corners of his lips curled up into a smile. He let go of Jianyun's hand. Then I will help you hit her. As he spoke, he slapped himself without hesitation. Hey! You're crazy! Jianyun quickly grabbed Huo Liancheng's hand and stopped him from torturing himself. Are you not angry? Huo Liancheng held Jianyun's hand and used the tip of his nose to rub her forehead. Don't touch me. Jianyun turned her head and dodged. Okay, don't be angry anymore. I will listen to you in the future, and will never make you angry again. Huo Liancheng hugged Jianyun tightly and gently kissed her neck. Go away. I told you not to touch me. I haven't forgiven you yet. Jianyun could not be angry, but her pride did not allow her to accept Huo Liancheng's apology so easily. Then how can you forgive me? As long as you say it, I will do it. Huo Liancheng said seriously. Wait until I think about it, Jianyun said angrily. Okay, I will wait. Huo Liancheng had not seen Jianyun for a long time and had long thought about it. At this moment, he was hugging soft jade and the fragrance was in his arms. He almost lost control of himself. He could not hold it anymore and did not care where he was. He held Jianyun's hands up and down and even wanted to kiss her. But how could Jianyun agree? She naturally struggled with all her might. You, what are you doing? If this continues, I will be angry. Let me kiss you. You missed me so much. Huo Liancheng pressed the back of Jian Yun's head and wanted to kiss her. But before he could kiss her, Huo Liancheng heard an angry shout. Stinking brat! What are you doing? Jian Yun was also shocked. She turned her head and saw Granny Liao with her hands on her waist, standing at the door angrily staring at them. The door? When did the door open? Jian Yun was stunned. Before Huo Liancheng could say anything, Granny Liao had already rushed over and rescued Jian Yun from Huo Liancheng's wolf claw. When she saw Jian Yun's red and swollen eyes that were like rabbits and her face full of tears, Granny Liao did not need to ask to understand what had happened. She immediately became angry and slapped Huo Liancheng. Stinking brat! Are you out of your mind? You actually dare come and bully Yun. Grandma, Huo Liancheng wanted to explain, but Granny Liao did not give him the chance to speak. Yun, what exactly happened? Tell Grandma that Grandma will make the decision for you. Granny Liao hugged Jian Yun in pain and gently patted Jian Yun's back to comfort her. Jian Yun wanted to say something, but when she opened her mouth, she sobbed. This made Granny Liao's heart ache. Did this little rascal bully you? The corner of Jian Yun's mouth twitched. Granny Liao could really guess. A guess was right. Okay, don't cry. Just now when you saw him looking like he had seen a ghost, I knew something must have happened. Chapter 277, Conduct of Justice. Granny Liao glared at Huo Liancheng. Don't worry, I'll help you. I will definitely uphold justice for you. Grandma, this is not what you think. Huo Liancheng knew it was bad when he saw Jian Yun sobbing and not explaining. This girl wanted revenge. Shut up, Granny Liao shouted at Huo Liancheng. Come out with me. Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun helplessly. He saw her purse her lips. Although she was sobbing, her eyes were rolling around. She stole glances at him from time to time. That gaze was very strange. What are you still standing there for? At such an old age, even if you want to flirt with a girl, you have to see who your partner is. You ran into someone's house and did something to a good girl who was pure and innocent. You don't feel ashamed. Granny Liao walked to the door and found that Huo Liancheng did not follow her. She immediately turned around and scolded sternly. Huo Liancheng saw Jian Yun turn her back to him this time and did not explain. She had completely proven that he came to the door to play tricks. Pervert. Playing with her facts. His handsome face was so dark that it could almost drip water. Jian Yun knew that Huo Liancheng was staring at her, but she did not want to help him. He did not think that what he said just now could make her completely calm down. Turn on your phone. When Huo Liancheng passed by Jian Yun, he quickly pinched her hand and said something. He quickly followed Granny Liao out. When Jian Yun heard the door close, she let out a sigh of relief. These days of depression seemed to have disappeared along with it. It was replaced by a complicated feeling that was hard to describe. Yanzi did not know when she came back. The moment she entered the door, she saw Jian Yun standing in front of the sofa in a daze. She walked over and tilted her head to look at Jian Yun's expression. Then she smiled and said, "Have you reconciled?" Jian Yun was shocked by Yanzi's sudden voice. She looked at Yanzi and only reacted after a long time. Her face immediately turned red. It's so embarrassing. Yanzi scratched her face a few times and laughed at Jian Yun. She reached out and pulled her to the flank. His eyes are red. He cried like this. Huoda, handsome man's heart is aching to death. Quickly take a towel and apply it, otherwise it will be swollen later. Jian Yun washed her face and used a hot towel to put on her eyes. Yanzi poured her a glass of water. When I came back just now, I saw Aunt Liao at their doorstep scolding handsome Huo. He even said that he came to flirt with a lady. What is going on? That's all? Jian Yun's voice was hoarse from crying and she pouted. Huh? Yanzi thought for a moment and thought it through. She immediately laughed. This is a big misunderstanding. Big handsome Huo has an explanation. But fate is really hard to explain. You hid here with me. I didn't expect that Grandma Huo Liancheng actually lived next door. I see that Granny Liao seems to like you quite a bit, but for a big family like them, marriage is usually not something that can be decided by themselves. Sigh, I wonder how she will react if she knows you are her granddaughter-in-law. Jian Yun heard this and also frowned and did not speak anymore. That's right, Yanzi was right. Granny Liao currently likes her because they have nothing to do with her. It was just that she liked her as a stranger. If she knew that she and Huo Liancheng were married, would Granny Liao still treat her so well? Ayo, look at my mouth. Why are you saying this? Jian Yun, don't think too much. As long as you and Huo Liancheng are on the same mind, it will be fine. Isn't there a saying that husband and wife should be on the same side and benefit each other? Don't think too much. Yanzi immediately realized that she had said something wrong. Jian Yun's mind was heavy to begin with. Those words just now would definitely make her think too much. Sister Z, actually, I am very worried. Jian Yun sighed. I have always been worried. At the same time, Huo Liancheng was standing at the door being reprimanded by Granny Liao. Little rascal, when did you become so unsavory? Did you run away and force others to use force on girls? Aren't you throwing the Huo family's face away? Granny Liao was furious when she thought about what Huo Liancheng had done. Grandma, I don't use force. Huo Liancheng sighed helplessly. Also, can you not stand at the door and talk about this? What? You don't feel embarrassed even when you open the door and want to kiss a girl? You feel embarrassed when I say a few words at the door? Granny Liao rolled her eyes at Huo Liancheng. Grandma, I told you it was not what you think. Huo Liancheng reached out to grab Granny Liao's shoulder and brought her home. Go in and tell me that you still have a competition tomorrow. Don't tire yourself out. After all, she was his biological grandson. Granny Liao was not really angry. She followed Huo Liancheng into the house. However, as soon as she sat down on the sofa, she grabbed Huo Liancheng's right hand and stared at the ring on his hand in surprise. Did you find the ring? Granny Liao looked at it carefully for a while and suddenly cried out in surprise. It really is the family heirloom ring. I found it. Huo Liancheng nodded and took off the ring from his index finger and passed it to Granny Liao. Granny Liao held it in her hand and took the magnifying glass from the drawer. After looking at it for a long time, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. That's right, the names of the men from the Huo family for generations are all there. They are real family rings. Liancheng, didn't you say you lost it 6 years ago? Why did you suddenly find it again? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. He naturally wouldn't say that the ring was also given to Jianyun by him. At that time, he was in despair. He did not want anything anymore. This family ring was a huge burden to him. That was why he didn't hesitate to give it to Jianyun when he was traveling. Of course, he also had other thoughts. Grandma, 1 or 2 sentences? I can't say it clearly, but don't tell anyone about this. Let's see if there will be any movements from the other side. Huo Liancheng said in a deep voice. Okay, I understand. Granny Liao handed the ring back to Huo Liancheng. Her expression became serious. Liancheng, you haven't been at home for the past few years. Do you know what's going on over there? Huo Liancheng patted Granny Liao's hand and comforted her. Grandma, don't worry. I know what I am doing. Jianyun only turned on her phone an hour later. She had just turned it on when her phone rang. It was Huo Liancheng. Why did you only turn it on now? Huo Liancheng asked unhappily. No. Jianyun muttered. Huo Liancheng was silent. His voice was soft. Come here. No. Jianyun rejected him. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. She did not give Huo Liancheng a chance to speak. She pressed the phone. Did this guy really think that she would come and go as she called? She was not afraid of him now that he would order her to do whatever she wanted. Jianyun hung up the phone and was just about to call her mother when she suddenly heard the doorbell ring. Yanzi called from inside the house. Baby, open the door and see if it's takeout, little brother. Jianyun got up and walked over. She did not think much and opened the door. But the takeout brother in front of her was too handsome. Baby, is it takeout brother? There's money on the table. Give it to him. Yanzi did not hear the sound, so she called out again. The corner of Jianyun's mouth twitched because she saw Huo Liancheng's face turn black again. That's right. A dignified President Huo was actually treated as a delivery man. He definitely would not be happy. Come out. Huo Liancheng reached out his hand. Chapter 278, I hate you. No. Jianyun wanted to close the door. Huo Liancheng was quick to react. He put his hand on the door and grabbed Jianyun's arm. He pulled her into his arms. Jianyun's face turned red. She glared at Huo Liancheng. Let go. Don't even think about it for the rest of your life. Huo Liancheng kissed Jianyun. Yo. Yanzi had just walked out of the door when she saw such an explosive scene. She immediately turned around and walked back. At the same time, she waved her hand. Baby, don't come back tonight. Remember to close the door for me. Jianyun was embarrassed and angry. She reached out to push Huo Liancheng. Aren't you afraid that your grandma will scold you again when she sees it? She went to play cards with Quirong. She will not come back until 10:00. Huo Liancheng smiled. He leaned into Jianyun's ear and whispered, Come with me. I will show you something. Not interested. Jianyun was still feeling awkward. She would not be so obedient. Are you still angry? Then can you hit me again to vent your anger? Huo Liancheng picked up Jianyun's hand and slapped her on his face. Jianyun quickly pulled her hand back and looked at Huo Liancheng speechlessly. Is this interesting? As long as you are happy. Huo Liancheng grabbed Jianyun's hand and kissed it. Hey, can you not show your affection in front of my sister who is alone in her room? It's very annoying. Yanzi's voice sounded from behind. Jianyun pushed Huo Liancheng out. You go, I'm going to sleep. If you don't leave, I won't leave either. Huo Liancheng started to act like a rascal. He wanted to come in as well. Hey. Jianyun was depressed. After all, she was staying at Yanzi's place. It was really inappropriate for her to bring a man back to her house, but she could not chase Huo Liancheng away. She stomped her feet in anger and could only follow Huo Liancheng out. Granny Liao was indeed not at home. Quirong also followed out. Huo Liancheng held Jianyun's hand and led her into the second bedroom. The bed was covered with blankets. He should be staying here tonight. Huo Liancheng let Jianyun sit on the bed. Suddenly, like magic, a rose appeared from behind her hair and passed it to Jianyun. Here? No. Jianyun pursed her lips and turned her head to the side. She did not look at him and wanted to move her with just a rose. It was not such a good thing. You don't like it? Huo Liancheng smiled. Then I will throw it away. After he finished speaking, he really threw the rose into the trash can. Jianyun's eyes twitched, but she still held it in and did not say anything. Huo Liancheng pulled a chair over and sat opposite Jianyun. He did not know when he had a lighter in his hand, but he kept turning it around and playing with it. Suddenly, he lit the fire. Jian Yun's eyes lit up and she frowned. Just as he was about to say not to smoke, something flashed in front of him. Immediately, her neck felt cold. Jian Yun looked down and saw Huo Liancheng was wearing a necklace for her. The thin chain and pendant looked very unique. It looked like a mermaid. The eyes of the fish were inlaid with black gemstones. The tail of the fish had long tassels hanging down. It was simply too beautiful. Do you like it? Huo Liancheng put the necklace on Jian Yun and hugged her gently. I don't like it. Jian Yun wanted to go against Huo Liancheng now. Even if she liked the necklace at first glance, she would not say it. Then do you like me? Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun's ear and asked. Jian Yun was stunned for a moment before she realized that Huo Liancheng was playing hooligan again. She dodged. He said coldly, I don't like it. Aren't you afraid that I will be sad if you are so direct? Huo Liancheng sighed helplessly. What does it have to do with me if you are sad? Jian Yun's tone was still very hard. Stubborn girl, you are really not gentle. Also, next time when something happens, you are not allowed to leave just like that. You even hide and don't let me find you. Do you know how worried I am? Huo Liancheng was not satisfied with Jian Yun's attitude. He pinched her cheeks and forced her to look at him. Are you worried? Are you worried? Why are you not worried? Jian Yun heard Huo Liancheng say. She glared at him and said angrily, but she did not say anything else. Nothing. Huo Liancheng stared into Jian Yun's eyes. Nothing. If there's nothing else, I'll go back. Jian Yun pushed Huo Liancheng away and got up to leave. Are you angry that I did not send you a message? Huo Liancheng's lips curled up into a smile that wasn't a smile. He pulled Jian Yun and pulled her to sit on his lap. He hugged her tightly and asked, Don't flatter yourself. I don't care. Jian Yun got angry and tried to push Huo Liancheng away. Huo Liancheng smiled. He did not let go of Jian Yun. Instead, he turned around and pressed her down. Jian Yun did not even have time to scream when her mouth was blocked. It smells so good. Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun and buried his face in her neck. Jian Yun had just taken a bath and her body had the scent of lemon mixed with her own body fragrance. It was very tempting. Can you give it to me? Huo Liancheng bit Jian Yun's earlobe and said, I miss you. Give it to me, okay? Jian Yun heard him and was stunned for a moment before she understood what he meant. She suddenly trembled and subconsciously pushed Huo Liancheng. Her face turned pale. No, you, go away. I want to go back. Good boy. Huo Liancheng would not let go of Jian Yun just like that. He held his arms and leaned over to look at her. He kissed her and comforted her gently. It was my fault last time. I didn't know you were not angry, okay? I will not treat you like that again in the future. No, I want to go back. Go away. Jian Yun did not want to recall that night at all. All she remembered was the intense pain and shame. Trust me, it will not hurt this time. Huo Liancheng was also very upset. How could he know that it was Jian Yun's first time? 6 years ago, when he knew her, she and Shu Haiyang had been together. She also told him that she would marry Shu Haiyang after graduation. So he thought that even if she broke up with Shu Haiyang, she could not be a virgin. No, I don't believe you. Jian Yun only wanted to stay away from Huo Liancheng. Even though she understood her feelings for him, it did not mean that she was willing to endure the pain and humiliation. Duo Air, can you give me another chance? Huo Liancheng kept kissing Jian Yun's eyes. That night, when he met her again at the coffee shop, she was wearing heavy makeup. At first, he did not recognize her, but when he walked out of the door, he remembered that when he looked into his eyes, there was a sense of familiarity in those eyes that were covered with thick eyeshadow. No matter how heavy the makeup was, it could not cover up those moist and clear eyes. In the past, he was attracted by these eyes. I hate you. Jian Yun covered her face and started crying again. Even though Huo Liancheng had apologized, the thorn in her heart was still there. She had never suffered such humiliation. This made her love and hate him. But I love you. Huo Liancheng picked up Jian Yun's hand with heartache. He kissed her and coaxed her softly in her ear. I love you. Chapter 279. If I knew I'd fall in love with you, I love you. These 3 words are probably the most beautiful language in the world. What women loved to hear the most were these 3 words spoken from the people they loved. At this moment, Jian Yun looked at Huo Liancheng's face, which was right in front of her, and felt her heart jump. Her stiff body slowly relaxed, but the tears in her eyes could not stop flowing. Don't cry, okay? I'm sorry, I will never let you cry again in the future. Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun's cheeks and eyes, and kissed off her tears. Gradually, the kiss moved down. No. Jian Yun was afraid and subconsciously wanted to hide. Don't be afraid. Huo Liancheng kissed her and his big hand gently stroked the curve of her waist. Gradually in the room, only the sound of breathing could be heard. This time, Huo Liancheng was very patient. Although Jian Yun still felt uncomfortable, she did not feel the pain that was about to split open the first time. Perhaps it was because she understood her feelings, or perhaps it was because Huo Liancheng's sweet words were too moving that Jian Yun put all her heart and soul into it. She finally felt the extreme joy that was created when people who loved each other were together as described in the book. In the soft summer wind, the room was full of charm, like roses blooming at night, and the flowers were intoxicating. When everything was over, Jian Yun was so tired that she could not get up. Huo Liancheng hugged her as if he could not kiss her no matter what. He could not bear to let go of her for a moment. Why? Huo Liancheng suddenly asked. What? Jian Yun's face was still red, and her forehead was full of sweat. She looked at him. Why is the first time still here? I thought you and him. Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes, and his eyes were very deep. Jian Yun turned her head to the side and said coldly, I went to the hospital to make up for it. Huo Liancheng's mouth twitched. He helplessly pulled Jian Yun's nose. Are you still angry? I was so angry that I lost my head and said nonsense. I can still tell if it's true or not. Jian Yun's eyelids twitched when she heard that. She looked at Huo Liancheng. So you are very experienced in this? Huo Liancheng carefully looked at Jian Yun's expression. He hesitated for a moment before saying, Duo air, would you believe me if I said I have no experience? I don't believe you. Jian Yun immediately shook her head and said resolutely, I will think that you are very hypocritical. Huo Liancheng buried his face in Jian Yun's neck and said in a muffled voice, All right. Jian Yun waited for a long time but did not see him speak again. She felt as if a cat was scratching in her heart and had a very uncomfortable feeling. It made her really want to know how many women Huo Liancheng had in the past. Do you have many women? Jian Yun could not help but ask. It's not good not to say hello. Huo Liancheng's expression was a little ugly. He looked up and saw Jian Yun's eyes. He put his hand around her waist and said seriously, I did not know that I would meet you and fall in love with you. Jian Yun lowered her eyes and looked sad. Is that a lot? Not much. I'm not that promiscuous. Huo Liancheng could not bear to see Jian Yun's sad expression. He tightly hugged her. Ever since I met you for the past 6 years, I have never touched any woman again. Jian Yun pursed her lips. She suddenly felt that it was ridiculous for her to mind this. Who cared about chastity as much as she did now? I am sorry. I should not have asked this, Jian Yun said in a low voice. Duer, I'm sorry. Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun's forehead and said softly, If I knew I would fall in love with you, I definitely wouldn't. Jian Yun reached out and hooked her arm around Huo Liancheng's neck. She took the initiative to kiss him and blocked his words. Since they were in love, why should they care about the past? Huo Liancheng did not expect Jian Yun to kiss him on her own. He raised his sword-like brows in disbelief. Surprise flashed across his eyes. Almost immediately he flipped over and pressed Jian Yun under him. Wu, don't? Just now? Jian Yun sensed the change in Huo Liancheng's body and was so scared that she quickly pushed him. Again. Huo Liancheng did not say anything and started another round of attacks. However, just as the two of them were about to reach the point of love, they suddenly heard the sound of the door, and then they heard Granny Liao and Quirong talking. This time Jian Yun was so scared that her soul flew away. She was also stunned by Huo Liancheng. She actually forgot that this was Granny Liao's house. If Granny Liao saw that she was doing something improper with her grandson in her bed, would she take a broom and chase her out at that time? Don't be afraid, I locked the door. Huo Liancheng comforted Jian Yun in a low voice, but there seemed to be a trace of pain in his voice. Jian Yun was slightly relieved when she heard that, but then she heard a knock on the door. Granny Liao's voice sounded outside the door. Liancheng, are you asleep? If you are not asleep, come out. I have something to talk to you about. Jian Yun was so scared that she closed her eyes. She felt her entire body stiffen. Huo Liancheng tried his best to suppress his voice. Grandma, I am asleep. Let's talk tomorrow. When did you sleep so early? Why is your voice wrong? Did you catch a cold? Granny Liao sneered. Yes, I have a headache. I am going to sleep, Huo Liancheng said through gritted teeth. Okay, go to sleep. We will talk about it tomorrow. Granny Liao's voice was far away. Jian Yun just let out a sigh of relief when she heard Granny Liao say to Quirong, Why are Xiaoyun's shoes here? She came? This time Jian Yun became nervous again. She was about to cry. If Granny Liao insisted on coming in, then what should she do? Miss, she left this place at night. Did you forget? She suddenly ran out, Quirong said. Oh, right, look at my memory. Granny Liao seemed to pat her forehead and then said with a smile, I quite like this girl. She looks pure and clean and very comfortable. One look and you can tell she's the daughter of a good family. Okay, it is already late today. Maybe she's already asleep. Send the shoes over tomorrow. Jian Yun heard this and finally let out a sigh of relief. Her tensed body also relaxed. She looked at Huo Liancheng and suddenly found that his forehead was covered in sweat and his expression was in pain. She could not help but ask curiously, Are you very hot? How dare you ask me? You are going to kill me, Huo Liancheng said. Huo Liancheng said through gritted teeth. What do you mean? Jian Yun was confused. She did not do anything. She was almost scared to death just now. That's what I meant. Huo Liancheng suddenly moved. Ah! Jian Yun could not help but cry out. She immediately covered her mouth in fear. Quirong, did you hear anything? Why does it seem like there is a woman's voice? Outside the door, Granny Liao asked doubtfully. No, is it the voice from the TV? Quirong shook her head. It's possible. Sigh, when one is old, one's ears are no longer useful. Granny Liao smiled and entered the house. The lights outside had also turned off. Jian Yun was finally relieved. Hey, I'm going back. Jian Yun did not dare to stay any longer. She felt that she had really lost her mind. She was actually deceived by Huo Liancheng to do this kind of thing here. If Granny Liao found out about this, how would she face her in the future? The work is not done yet. Do you want to skip work? Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun. Chapter 280. You want to kill me? At this critical moment, how could Huo Liancheng let Jian Yun go? He was like a glutton whose appetite had been lifted. How could he not eat heartily? No, Granny Liao will find out. You want to kill me. Jian Yun was anxious, but she was suppressed and could not move. She could only look at Huo Liancheng with pleading eyes. If you leave now, you will kill me. Huo Liancheng panted and said. At the same time, he also started to move. Jian Yun could only take a step back. Then hurry up. Yes. Huo Liancheng replied in a low voice and continued to attack. Half an hour later, Jian Yun realized that President Huo had no intention of stopping. She could not resist and was aroused again. She could only make up her mind and follow his rhythm, regardless of what happened. When everything was finally over, Jian Yun felt so tired that she could not get up. Huo Liancheng hugged her from behind and kept kissing her. You did not answer my question just now. He rubbed against her ear. What? Jian Yun turned her head to look at Huo Liancheng. There was no light in the room. The curtains were pulled open and moonlight poured in. A faint silver glow fell on the two of them, as if they were covered in a white veil. Why is it the first time? Huo Liancheng had never been as curious as he was now. He really wanted to know everything about Jian Yun. Jian Yun lowered her eyes and was silent for a while before she said, Actually, I originally planned to give it to him as a gift on his birthday, but before that day, he and Lin Lanlan got together. Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes and held Jian Yun's soft little hand. Didn't he love you very much? Why would he still have an affair? Jian Yun suddenly sneered and looked at Huo Liancheng. Because I pretended to be a virgin and didn't let him touch me, so he went to find someone else. Huo Liancheng's eyelids twitched. He should have known that this girl held a grudge and should not mention this. So he carefully avoided this topic and kissed Jian Yun. Duoer, you are so pretty. Hypocrite. Jian Yun rolled her eyes. How is that possible? Huo Liancheng took Jian Yun's hand and placed it at an indescribable place. He smiled maliciously. Look, I can't be more real. Why are you so shameless? Jian Yun felt as if her hand was on fire. She quickly pulled her hand back and said angrily, I am leaving. Huo Liancheng hugged Jian Yun and said with a smile, Duoer, from today onwards, we are a real couple. When Jian Yun heard these words, her heart suddenly trembled slightly. She looked at Huo Liancheng and her eyes flashed, but in the end, she did not say the words in her heart. Actually, Jian Yun really wanted to ask Huo Liancheng if the marriage contract was still counted. But when the words came to her mouth, she swallowed them because she did not want to spoil the current atmosphere. Now she could only cherish the moment and take it step by step. In the future, things would happen. Let's talk about it in the future. What? Are you unhappy? Huo Lian asked. Seeing Jian Yun was stunned, Huo Lian could not help hugging her tightly and asked gently, Did I hurt you just now? Jian Yun shook her head and then nodded. It hurts a little. I'm sorry. Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun's hand. Jian Yun suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Huo Liancheng looked up and asked, What is it? I want to go back. Jian Yun pursed her lips. Go back and accompany your sister Z? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. What nonsense are you talking about? Jian Yun gave Huo Liancheng a backhand pat. I don't have that kind of relationship with Sister Z. Jian Yun remembered that Huo Liancheng asked this because Granny Liao wanted to introduce her to her grandson a few days ago. At that time, she did not know who Granny Liao's grandson was, so she fabricated that she liked women. How did she know that Granny Liao's grandson was actually Huo Liancheng? What he said at that time was heard by him without missing a single word. Then why do you have to go back? Huo Liancheng was not happy. I want to pee, Jian Yun said angrily. Huo Liancheng was silent for a while and then smiled. I'll carry you. No, Granny Liao will be finished if she sees you. Jian Yun was so scared that she quickly shook her head. It is already 12 o'clock. She is asleep. Huo Liancheng smiled. He got up and quickly put on his pants. He wrapped the thin blanket around Jian Yun and picked her up. Hey, you're crazy! Jian Yun was embarrassed and angry. She struggled with all her might to break free. Shh, be quiet, don't wake them up. Huo Liancheng kissed Jian Yun's mouth. Jian Yun saw that he had opened the door. The living room was dark. Only the moonlight outside the window was bright. Granny Liao and Quirong's room was not lit. They must have fallen asleep. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. Huo Liancheng carried Jian Yun into the bathroom. Jian Yun stared at Huo Liancheng but found that he did not have any intention of going out. Her face could not help but turn red. You're beside me and I can't pee? Sitting on the toilet to pee. Do you need me to teach you this? Huo Liancheng said naturally. Jian Yun rolled her eyes and pushed Huo Liancheng away. However, just as Jian Yun finished peeing and was about to get up, she suddenly heard Granny Liao's voice from outside. Liancheng, why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? Why are you standing at the toilet door? Jian Yun's scalp was already tingling, but Huo Liancheng was very calm. Grandma, I am going to the toilet. Oh, then hurry up and go. I want to go in and get something. Granny Liao turned on the light in the living room. Huo Liancheng flashed into the bathroom and immediately felt the soft little person jump into his arms. He looked down and saw Jian Yun's little face was red and her big eyes were filled with tears. What should we do? Jinyun was so anxious that she was about to cry. If Granny Liao saw that her clothes were messed up with Hu Liancheng, she would not have the face to see anyone. It's okay. Hu Liancheng patted Jianyun's shoulder and comforted her. Are you done? Yes. Jianyun nodded. Even if she had to pee, she would be scared back. Hu Liancheng smiled and turned around to say to the outside, Grandma, turn off the lights. Stay away for a while. I am not wearing any clothes. Plop. Jianyun rolled her eyes at Hu Liancheng. He actually used this move. Stinking brat, you played hooligan until you came to your grandma's house. Granny Liao was also very speechless, but she still turned off the light and returned to the room. Let's go. Hu Liancheng picked up Jianyun again and opened the door. He walked back to his room. You scared me. I want to go back. Jianyun lifted the blanket and was already covered in cold sweat. She did not dare to stay any longer. Who knew if Granny Liao would knock on the door and come in later? It's not over yet. Hu Liancheng got the sweet taste and knew the taste of the marrow. He could not bear to let Jianyun go. He only saw his eyes staring at Jianyun. Again, Jianyun suddenly felt her hair stand on end. I don't want it. Hu Liancheng tried his best to coax her. Door, be good. You, beast. Jianyun's voice gradually became softer. Chapter 281. Got caught. Perhaps it was because Jianyun was nervous, but she did not sleep for long before she woke up. She picked up the watch Hu Liancheng had placed on the bed and looked at the time. It was almost 5 o'clock. She did not dare to delay. She took away the arm Hu Liancheng placed on her waist and quietly got up to leave. But as soon as she moved, she felt her hands and feet go soft. She almost got off the bed. Jianyun could not help but cover her face. This was the consequence of where to. Jianyun moved, and Hu Liancheng also woke up. He hooked his arm around Jianyun's slender waist and carried her into his embrace as he asked gently. I have to go back. Otherwise, Granny Liao and the others will be at home at dawn. How can I go out? Jianyun did not oppose Hu Liancheng this time. Instead, she softened her voice and hugged his waist. She blinked her big deer-like eyes and looked at him. Then take this opportunity to tell her that our relationship is not better? Hu Liancheng stroked Jianyun's face. Clearly, he enjoyed her obedience. No. Jianyun quickly shook her head. Do you want to scare your grandma until her blood pressure rises? Maybe she will be very happy. Hu Liancheng smiled. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Anyway, we can't let anyone know about our relationship. You said it yourself. Jianyun pouted. She did not know Hu Liancheng either. Did she really want to tell Granny Liao about their relationship? However, her intuition told her that it was best not to say it out loud. It's only 5 o'clock. Let's sleep a little more. Hu Liancheng still did not want to let Jianyun go. It was not easy for him to obtain her completely. No. Jianyun recovered her strength. She pushed Hu Liancheng away, got off the bed, and put on her clothes. She quietly walked out of the door. It was not even 5 in the morning. The sky was bright in the early summer, but it was still dark in the room. Jianyun turned her head to look. Granny Liao's door was closed, and there was no sound. She should not have gotten up yet. She pursed her lips and walked to the door familiarly, and changed into her shoes. She just let out a sigh of relief and reached out to open the door. Suddenly there was a paw sound, and the light turned on. Xiaoyan, why are you here? Qiron's voice sounded. At this moment, Jianyun felt her blood rush into her head. She was stunned for a moment before she turned around and pointed awkwardly at her feet. I'm here to get my shoes. Oh. Qiron nodded and smiled. I was going to send it to you in the morning. You came just in time to save me a trip. Yes. The corner of Jianyun's mouth twitched. Right now, she only wanted to leave quickly. Qiron walked 2 steps forward and suddenly stopped. She looked at Jianyun, who had opened the door and was about to go out with a face full of hesitation. Wait, Xiaoyun, how did you get in? It's only 5 o'clock now. Why are you so early? I got up to run. Jianyun was so scared that her heart almost stopped beating. She made up some nonsense. I saw that the door was not closed and came in. The door was not closed? When Qiron heard this, she immediately became nervous. Did we forget to close the door when we went home last night? Oh my God, what if there is a thief? Granny Liao heard the sound and came out at this time. When she heard it, she was shocked. What? Did the door not close last night? Jianyun's face was bitter, and she wanted to bite her tongue off. She said the door was not closed, so she was trying to scare the 2 old ladies. Now she could not leave, and she could not stay, but her body was very uncomfortable, and she really wanted to go back and lie down. Fortunately, Hu Liancheng came out at the right time to help Jianyun out. The door was opened by me, he said and pointed at his body. I was going to run. I came back to get something. So that's how it is. You scared me to death. Granny Liao and Qiron patted their chests and let out a sigh of relief with fear. I heard that there have been a lot of burglary cases recently. There is a family in the residential area in front who was stabbed in the middle of the night and is still living in the hospital. Granny Liao, Grandma Kui, I'm sorry for making you worry. Jianyun looked at the 2 old ladies' pale faces and could not help feeling a little guilty. She secretly looked at Hu Liancheng and found that he was also looking at her. She quietly stuck out her tongue and waved her hand. Then I will go first. Grandma, it is still early. You sleep for a while more. I will go for a run. Huo Liancheng's eyes did not move away from Jian Yun. Seeing her go out, he followed her out. Liancheng, wait a moment. I have something to tell you. Granny Liao seemed to have thought of something and pulled Huo Liancheng to talk to him. Wait until I come back. Huo Liancheng was in a hurry to chase after Jian Yun. He patted Granny Liao and turned around to leave. Yanzi's residential area was considered to be of higher quality in the New North District. The entrance was locked by a password. Jian Yun entered the password, and just as she was about to close the door, Huo Liancheng also squeezed in. Hey, aren't you going to run? Jian Yun craned her neck and went out to take a look. When she saw Granny Liao's door was closed opposite her, she heaved a sigh of relief. Are you afraid that my grandma will know? Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows and did not answer. Didn't you say you can't let anyone know? Jian Yun held her stomach and walked towards her room to avoid this question. Are you not feeling well? Huo Liancheng followed her and asked with concern. Yes, it still hurts a little. Jian Yun stopped being shy. Pain was pain. If she didn't say anything, what would happen if this beast came again? Here, she said. Huo Liancheng stretched out his hand. There was a white jade porcelain bottle in his palm. It was a very classical style. Jian Yun recognized this. It was the ointment made by Senior Yin himself. It was cool to cool down the swelling. When they first met, Huo Liancheng had given her a bottle. You still have this with you? Jian Yun looked up hesitantly at Huo Liancheng. She kept feeling that Huo Liancheng was carrying something with him. Did he know you would give it to her? Where did you think you were going? Huo Liancheng knocked Jian Yun on the head and showed her his arm. I used it myself. Why did you burn yourself with a cigarette butt? Jian Yun asked. Do you want to torture yourself? Jian Yun glanced at Huo Liancheng. There was a scar on the inside of Huo Liancheng's arm. It looked like he was burning himself with a cigarette butt. I don't have that hobby. I miss you too much. I accidentally scalded you. Huo Liancheng was speechless. Jian Yun blushed. She rolled her eyes at Huo Liancheng. I don't believe you miss me. You didn't believe me when I worked so hard last night? Huo Liancheng hugged Jian Yun's waist and lowered his head to kiss her. Hey, I didn't brush my teeth. Jian Yun quickly covered her mouth. I don't mind. Huo Liancheng smiled. Ahem, I don't mind. I saw you two torturing dogs early in the morning. Can't you understand my cold and empty heart? Yanzi got up and went to the toilet. She did not expect to see this scene. She immediately pretended to cough and put on an expression of disdain. Sister Z. Jian Yun turned her head to look at Huo Liancheng and winked at him. The two of them ran to the house to kiss each other. I am not suitable. Didn't you want to run? Do you want to come? Huo Liancheng pinched Jian Yun's hand. Let me rest, okay? I'm so tired. Jian Yun was about to faint. She had been tortured all night, and she could still stand here and talk. She admired herself. Why did young Master Huo still have the nerve to ask her to run? Chapter 282. Tell me those 3 words. Then sleep for a while and call me when you wake up. Huo Liancheng also saw that Jian Yun was not in good spirits. She was still a young girl, and his desire was too strong. He really wanted to let her rest. Yes. Jian Yun quickly nodded. With Yanzi here, this big light bulb, Huo Liancheng could not have any intimate movements with Jian Yun. He squeezed her hand and then left. Once Huo Liancheng left, Yanzi immediately pounced on Jian Yun and hugged her. Hey, what are you doing? Jian Yun was shocked and quickly dodged. Why did your husband hurt you all over again? Yanzi looked at Jian Yun's neck and arms and shook her head and sighed. Jian Yun's face immediately turned red. She was embarrassed and turned around to run away. Yanzi would not let go of such a good opportunity to gossip. She followed and leaned against the doorframe. Seeing Jian Yun wash her face, she asked with a smile, Have you guys reconciled? Jian Yun's mouth was full of toothpaste. She was a little embarrassed and nodded. That's right, she felt that it was ridiculous. Last night, they were still arguing fiercely and she hated him very much. Now it was actually fine and they even carried out an intimate exercise for the entire night. Red face? Baby, are you thinking of some improper scene again? Yanzi teased Jian Yun mischievously. Could it be that you exercised all night last night? How is that possible? Jian Yun knew that Yanzi was usually very open-minded. These few days when she was with Yanzi, she did not hesitate to say it. Now that Yanzi teased her, she immediately retorted, I was thinking about what you usually rely on to solve your physical needs. Why are you talking about me again? Yanzi blinked and deliberately pretended to be depressed. She leaned against the doorframe and said, This question is very easy to answer. Your brother-in-law is not at home and I can't go out and steal people. I can only rely on watching a small movie to solve my needs. Jian Yun spat out all the toothpaste in her mouth. You really have the nerve to say it. What's there to be embarrassed about? Yanzi was very calm. Jian Yun, don't tell me you haven't seen it. Jian Yun rinsed her mouth and washed her face. She decided not to get along with Yanzi discussing such an explosive topic. Yes, but she had indeed seen it before. That was when she was still in university. She and a few people in the dormitory were curious and studied it together. That's right, Jian Yun. Do you want to see it? I have it on my computer. Why don't I cuff it to you? You should study it more in private. This is a beautiful thing. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Yanzi squeezed into the bathroom and sat on the toilet to make things easier. She did not forget to continue teasing Jianyun. "No, I'm going to bed." Jianyun turned her head and left. She was not interested in movies like that. Right now, her whole body was sore and weak. She just wanted to sleep on the bed. When Jianyun woke up, it was almost 9 o'clock. She quickly turned on her phone. There was only one message. "I am in the park next to the neighborhood by the lake." The message was naturally from Huo Liancheng. Jianyun looked at the time and saw that it was 6:30. She was shocked and quickly dialed Huo Liancheng's number. "You're awake?" A lazy voice sounded. Huo Liancheng seemed to be in a good mood. "Where are you?" Jianyun asked. "The park," Huo Liancheng said. "Come here. I'll wait for you in the pavilion by the lake." Jianyun suddenly did not know what to say. This was a message sent at 6:30. It was almost 9 o'clock. It had been more than 2 hours. He would not be waiting there all the time, would he? Thinking of this, Jianyun did not dawdle any longer. She got up and changed her clothes. After tidying up, she took her phone and bag out of the door. Yanzi's residential area was considered to be of high quality. The complementary facilities were very complete, and the surrounding environment was also very good. There was a park beside the residential area. There were pavilions and pavilions. The lake water was clear and the plants were flourishing. The weather in May was very yin. Along the way, many people asked Jianyun for directions. Jianyun had always had a good temper. When others asked, she puffed her. When Jianyun saw the pavilion by the lake, it was already full. But there was no one in the pavilion. Jianyun looked around but did not see Huo Liancheng. She could not help but frown. She thought in her heart, could it be that Huo Liancheng had already left? Thinking about this, Jianyun was a little depressed. It was probably because she had delayed for too long and he could not wait anymore. "Miss, may I ask how to get to Yunshin Road?" Behind her, someone suddenly spoke and asked for directions. Jianyun thought for a while and frowned. The road to the heart? Why had she never heard of this place? That's not right. Heart path. Jianyun's heart path? And this voice? Jianyun's eyes lit up. She suddenly turned her head and was about to open her mouth to speak, when her vision suddenly turned black. A face came close and kissed her all of a sudden. A familiar aura and familiar eyes. Jianyun blinked, and a smile flowed out of the corner of her eyes. He was actually still in this place. "What are you laughing at?" Huo Liancheng had kissed enough and let go of Jianyun. He lowered his head to look at her and held Jianyun's chin with one hand as he asked. "Nothing." Jianyun hurriedly lowered her head. When she saw Huo Liancheng, she would think of their intimate contact last night. This made her feel shy. "Are you feeling shy?" The corner of Huo Liancheng's mouth curled up. At this moment, his heart was filled with joy. It was a dream that he had been dreaming all this time. Suddenly, he was filled with joy. His heart was filled with joy. This was an emotion that he had never experienced in his 30-odd years of life. No, Jianyun's face turned even redder. She did not even have the courage to raise her head to look at Huo Liancheng. A breeze blew and lifted the hair on her shoulders. Her drooping long eyelashes trembled like butterflies dancing in the flowers. Girl with a different heart and mouth. Huo Liancheng smiled. He held Jianyun's chin and lifted her up gently to force her to look at him. "You haven't said those 3 words to me yet." "What words?" Jianyun's hands were tightly clenched by her side. She suddenly became very nervous. "What do you think?" Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows. You just need to know." Jianyun was so embarrassed that she could not open her eyes. If she said those 3 words now, she would not be able to say it even if she was beaten to death. "But I want to hear it." Huo Liancheng gently hugged Jianyun and rubbed his chin on her neck. He said gently, "I was the one who did not calm down in the past. I am sorry. I really did not know that so many things have happened to you, so I will not force you. When will you be willing to talk about it? I want you to be willing to say those 3 words to me." Jianyun bit her lips and suddenly felt that her eyes were a little sore. "Duo air, I love you." Huo Liancheng stroked Jianyun's hair and whispered in her ear, 6 years ago, when I was at my most desperate moment, it was you who walked over and extended such a clean and beautiful hand to me. If not for you, I would have died a long time ago. So, believe me, I will never hurt you." When Jianyun heard this, her heart suddenly moved. Huo Liancheng actually took the initiative to mention what happened 6 years ago. She was really curious. What exactly happened to him back then? Why did he, the heir of Huo's, end up wandering the streets with a face full of stubble and messy hair so thin that he did not look like a human? Chapter 283, Never Forgive You. What happened back then? Why did you? Jianyun could not help but ask. Huo Liancheng was silent for a while before he sat on a bench in the pavilion with Jianyun in his arms. He rubbed his chin against Jianyun's tender cheeks and said in a low voice, "I drove and got into a car accident. My sister." "What happened to your sister?" Jianyun suddenly became nervous. Instinct told her that something terrible must have happened. "I hit my head and fell unconscious. I became a vegetable." His voice was cold and emotionless, but only he himself knew that even after so many years, he still could not calm down when talking about this matter. His heart was in so much pain that he could not bear it. Even though Jianyun was already mentally prepared, when she heard these words, she was still so shocked that she could not speak. She looked at Huo Liancheng's calm face, but her heart was in so much pain that she could not breathe. I wish I could die for her. I can't accept it. Later I left my home and exiled myself. I only brought a few thousand yuan and went to many countries and places in the world. Huo Liancheng slowly said. He raised his head and looked at Jian Yun. Until I met you. So did you deliberately not cut your hair, beard and make it messy? Jian Yun frowned. She had a deep impression of the man from 6 years ago. She still remembered that it was summer vacation. She and Shu Haiyan went to Yellow Mountain together for a vacation. After climbing the mountain, they got into a conflict because of a small matter. Shu Haiyang, who had always been obedient to her, unexpectedly left her alone. She walked towards the hotel in a huff. Just as she reached the corner of the street, a hand suddenly reached out and grabbed her leg. Then she saw a few hooligans kicking a person on the ground. They were rummaging through his bag as if they were looking for something. Jian Yun had learned Tai Chi from the Duke of Foreign Lands since she was young and had some skills. It was easy for her to deal with a few hooligans. At that time, she had fiercely beaten those who saw her beautiful appearance. Just wanted to take advantage of the hooligans. Then she found out that the man on the ground was on the verge of death. His body was terribly hot, but even so, the man's eyes were still open. He had a pair of very beautiful eyes that were extremely bright and flashed with a wise light. He quietly stared at her, as if there was only her in his eyes. Perhaps it was because she was moved by those eyes, or perhaps it was due to fate that Jian Yun did not think too much about it. At that time, she purely wanted to save someone. She made the emergency call, but she did not dislike the Sloven cheese. She followed the car to the hospital and busied herself with taking care of that homeless person. And for him, she even had a fight with the people in the hospital. Because he was too slovenly, he probably hadn't taken a bath for many days. No patient was willing to stay in the same ward with him. The nurse wanted to arrange for him to stay in the stairwell. It was a hot summer day, and the stairwell was as hot as a steamer. Jian Yun could not take it anymore, and forcefully found the hospital director to judge. She took down a ward, and only he stayed in it. The doctor said that his fever was due to his low immunity and chronic malnutrition. There was also a very serious gastroenteritis. He had to take good care of it. However, she didn't know him, and she only stayed in Yellow Mountain for a few days. In a few days she would be going home, and she couldn't take care of him. Perhaps everything was predestined, and just as Jian Yun was worried, Shu Haiyan came to her. When he found out that she was so concerned about a homeless man, he immediately became furious. He said vicious words on the spot, asking her to either leave with him or break up. Jian Yun had a stubborn temper since she was young. She had a soft and unyielding character. If Shu Haiyan did not say it, it would be fine. Once he said it, her stubborn temper rose. She did not hesitate anymore and directly stayed behind. She really took care of this homeless man carefully. Perhaps Shu Haiyan was with Lin Lanlan at that time? He stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks, and Jian Yun accompanied him for 3 weeks. At that time, nothing had happened at home and her father was very good to her. She did not know much about money, and only after she was discharged from the hospital did she realize that she spent tens of thousands. But she did not mind. Because of the short time they spent together, she had good conversation with him. His speech was very good, and he was also very cultured. Although sometimes it was hard to conceal his arrogant eyes and cold aura, Jian Yun was not afraid of him. Furthermore, she also discovered that although this man's appearance was sloppy, he was not dirty. He was just untrimmed, but there was no strange smell on his body. It was very refreshing. His eyes were too charming. Even when he was in bed, he did not seem to be in a bad state at all. He showed her the pictures in his camera. He had walked through many places and left images all over the world. Among them, there was also her shadow. Sometimes, Jian Yun also thought that she was indeed too impulsive back then. She did not know his identity and background and just took care of him like this. If he was a bad person, then she would become the real Mr. Dongguo. However, she still did that. She took care of him for 3 whole weeks until her family called. She had no choice but to leave. She lost a sum of money to him. He did not want it, but he gave her the ring on his hand. He said that the ring was very important. He would come back to find her. Jian Yun only felt that the ring was special and did not take it to heart. After parting ways, she had encountered many heavy blows in her life. Later on, she also lost her phone. There was the contact information left behind by him in the phone. After she broke up with Shu Haiyan, she did not use that phone number anymore. The connection between them was cut off. Jian Yun was lost in her memories and suddenly felt a little stunned. Was this fate? She saved him. He fell in love with her and then came back to look for her? What are you thinking about? Huo Liancheng saw that Jian Yun did not speak for a long time, so he gently pinched her chin and asked gently. I'm thinking, did you make a mistake in your feelings for me? You are just grateful that I saved you. That is not love. Jian Yun hesitated for a moment, but still spoke out the confusion in her heart. She felt that there were some things that needed to be asked clearly in advance. Otherwise, if she was told that what happened in the past was only a misunderstanding after she gave her heart, then she would not be able to bear it. Do you think I am that stupid? Huo Liancheng was unhappy. But Jian Yun pursed her lips and a look of disappointment appeared on her small face. Are you worried that I will lie to you about your feelings? Huo Liancheng could be considered to have some understanding of Jian Yun. Perhaps it was because the previous relationship had left a deep wound on her, and she became timid and afraid. She was unwilling to look directly into her own heart. Jian Yun raised her head to meet Huo Liancheng's eyes. She said, my only request for love is loyalty. Once I accept a relationship, I will protect it with all my heart, but no one can say for sure what will happen in the future. Perhaps, gradually, we no longer like each other. When Huo Liancheng heard this, he frowned. Just as he was about to speak, Jian Yun interrupted him. Listen to me first. What I mean is, if you don't love me, say it. If you respect me, don't cheat or else. Otherwise what? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. Otherwise, I will never forgive you. Jian Yun said word by word. Chapter 284. Are you jealous? I will not betray you. Huo Liancheng stared at Jian Yun and swore, never. However, even if Huo Liancheng said so, Jian Yun still felt uneasy. I hope so. Jian Yun lowered her eyes and her tone was a little erratic. Trust me once, okay? Huo Liancheng did not like being questioned. He lifted Jian Yun's chin and said unhappily, why are you so unconfident? Shouldn't you believe that your charm is enough to tie me up and make my heart forever on you? I still prefer that you who was in high spirits back then. Jian Yun blinked her eyes and a hint of sweetness inexplicably welled up in her heart. She pursed her lips and smiled, but then she frowned. What is it now? Huo Liancheng asked. I was thinking that you are not the same as before. Your eyes are also different. Otherwise, I wouldn't be unable to recognize you. A person's appearance and temperament would change, but his eyes would not change. However, the Huo Liancheng in front of her really did not have the slightest resemblance to the man who was wandering outside in the past. Huo Liancheng was very cold, so cold that no one dared to approach him. However, that man back then had a pair of gentle and wise eyes. Time will change everything, Huo Liancheng said with a smile. Jian Yun looked into his eyes and smiled as well. The eyes of the man in front of her were clearly the pair of eyes she remembered. Jian Yun also knew that a lot of things must have happened to Huo Liancheng later on. If he did not say it now, she would not ask either. She felt that when he wanted to say it, he would naturally say it. All right, are there any more questions? If not, accompany me to dinner. Huo Liancheng scratched Jian Yun's nose. It's only 9 o'clock. Isn't it too early for lunch? Jian Yun asked. Jian Yun looked at the time. It's breakfast. Huo Liancheng glanced at Jian Yun resentfully. You won't wait until now, will you? Jian Yun asked. Jian Yun's mouth twitched a few times. What do you think? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. Jian Yun could not help but pursed her lips. She glanced at Huo Liancheng's clothes while she was at it. Yes, it was indeed the clothes that he wore when he went out for a run in the morning. It was very good. Finally, he was not wearing shirt and pants anymore. He wore a casual t-shirt and sports pants. Today, President Huo looked very different. The original him was too cold and made people not dare to get close to him. Today, he was as dazzling as the sun. Jian Yun could not take her eyes away from him, no matter what. Huo Liancheng held Jian Yun's hand and walked slowly along the cobblestone path in the park. The wind blew, and the May sky was clear. There was the fragrance of flowers everywhere. It was a beautiful scene, but it could not compare to the two of them who were like a couple. Along the way, the two of them seemed to be glowing and attracted many gazes. However, Huo Liancheng put on that cold look again, so no one dared to approach him. When the two of them sat on the chairs in the breakfast shop, Huo Liancheng suddenly said, Ah? Jian Yun did not react for a moment. Did you not realize that the people who asked you for directions today were all men? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes and looked down. He looked Jian Yun from head to toe. Today, she was wearing a white shirt and a black dress that was just over her knees. The bottom of the shirt was tied in the skirt, and her hair was casually draped over it. It was so fresh that it was like a gardenias blooming in the early summer morning. It made people want to go over and smell the fragrance. Jian Yun was speechless. Then she looked sideways at Huo Liancheng. So you're jealous? Jian Yun also said it casually, but when she said it, she felt that it was inappropriate. Although her relationship with Huo Liancheng had made progress, it did not seem like it was good enough for her to casually tease him. Wouldn't it? When Huo Liancheng heard this, his sword-like brows pricked up. He actually nodded very seriously. I'm jealous, so you are not allowed to talk to other men in the future. You are only allowed to look. I am alone. This time, Jian Yun's face turned red. She spat softly. You are already so old. Why do you still say such childish words? How childish? Huo Liancheng reached out to shake Jian Yun's hand. I'm serious. I am going to buy something. You eat first, I'll be right back. Jian Yun was still a little tender in terms of feelings. She blushed and could not stand Huo Liancheng flirting with her. She felt that if she stayed here any longer, she would probably burn herself. It was better to go out and calm down. After Jian Yun finished speaking, she did not wait for Huo Liancheng to reply. She stood up and ran out. Huo Liancheng looked at her back and could not help but smile gently. Very soon, Jian Yun came back. She saw Huo Liancheng slowly eating buns and 2 cups of soybean milk. She noticed that he did not notice her, so she quietly picked a medicine and put it in her mouth. She swallowed the soybean milk in one mouthful. Did you just go out to buy medicine? Although Huo Liancheng had his eyes lowered, he was still clear about Jian Yun's every move. He immediately asked. Oh, yeah. Jian Yun was shocked. She thought he did not see her. What medicine? Huo Liancheng asked again. Cold medicine. Jian Yun stuttered. She did not want to tell the truth. She was a little embarrassed. Let me see. Huo Liancheng extended his hand to Jian Yun. Well, you don't need to see it. It's just an ordinary cold medicine. Jian Yun's eyelids twitched. Why don't you let me see an ordinary cold medicine? Huo Liancheng's tone turned cold. Jian Yun did not want to quarrel with Huo Liancheng over such a small matter, but she was not sure if she would be angry if she took it out. She hesitated for a while and saw Huo Liancheng's determined look. In the end, she still took out the medicine box that she had stuffed into her bag and handed it to Huo Liancheng. She had just gone out to buy the contraceptive medicine after the incident. She was so crazy last night that she did not want. When Huo Liancheng saw the words on the medicine box, his eyebrows jumped. He suddenly looked up at Jian Yun. Jian Yun was shocked by his eyes. She wanted to explain, but Huo Liancheng said, Don't eat this kind of thing in the future. After all, it is medicine. It is not good for the body. Then what about pregnancy? Jian Yun's mind did not turn around. If he did not take medicine, could it be that he wanted a child? Take other measures. Huo Liancheng smiled. Good. This girl finally had the will to do intimate exercise with him. She did not keep rejecting him. Jian Yun's mind buzzed. She was shocked by Huo Liancheng's malicious smile. Aren't you angry? Why should I be angry? Huo Liancheng was confused. Don't all men want to get pregnant and give birth to their children so that they can prove their abilities? Huo Liancheng asked. Jian Yun tilted her head with a face full of question marks. Do you want to get pregnant? Huo Liancheng immediately asked. Not yet. Jian Yun carefully worded it. I don't like children. Huo Liancheng drank a mouthful of soybean milk and signaled Jian Yun. Drink the soybean milk. When Jian Yun went out, she grabbed a bread and a box of milk and ate it on the road. She was not hungry now. She drank 2 mouthfuls of soybean milk but felt dizzy because she did not know what Huo Liancheng meant by that. He said he did not like children? That meant he did not want children? Chapter 285. Let's announce our relationship. Jian Yun didn't know what Huo Liancheng meant, but it was not convenient for her to ask. It did not matter if he did not like it. Anyway, she did not intend to have a child now. Let's go. Huo Liancheng watched Jian Yun finish the soybean milk and stood up to extend his hand to her. At this time, there were not many people in the breakfast shop, but Huo Liancheng and Jian Yun's appearances were too outstanding. These 2 people attracted attention no matter where they went, and only a few people kept looking at them. Jian Yun got up and handed her hand to Huo Liancheng naturally. She narrowed her eyes and smiled at him. Huo Liancheng wrapped his arms around her and walked out of the door. Huo Liancheng looked at the door and walked straight to the convenience store. Do you want to buy something? Jian Yun asked. Yes. Huo Liancheng answered casually and entered the convenience store. He reached out and took a box of things from the shelf beside the counter. He looked down. There were not many people in the store. A female employee came over to recommend him enthusiastically. Sir, this is Doris's. May I know your number? Give me the biggest number. Huo Liancheng put the box in his hand back. He was too lazy to look at each and every one of them. He directly asked the shop assistant to find something for him. However, as soon as he said that, everyone in the shop looked at Huo Liancheng. Then, they looked at Jian Yun, who was standing side by side with Huo Liancheng. The man looked at Huo Liancheng with envy. The woman looked at Jian Yun with jealousy and hatred. The clerk was not old. When she heard this, the corner of her mouth curled up. She looked at Huo Liancheng on the shelf and kept looking at him. Jian Yun did not know what Huo Liancheng wanted to buy when he entered the convenience store. Only now did she realize that he had come to buy condoms. At that time, Jian Yun only felt a bang in her head and blood instantly exploded on her face. Especially when there were so many people staring at her with ambiguous eyes, it made Jian Yun so embarrassed that she wanted to find a hole to hide in. Heavens, is Uncle Huo crazy? He actually shamelessly said that he wanted the biggest condom in public? Fortunately, the shop assistant quickly took the number Huo Liancheng wanted. Huo Liancheng looked calm and composed. He paid the money and pulled Jian Yun, who was so embarrassed that she could not raise her head, out very calmly. Outside the door, the cold wind blew. Jian Yun felt that her face was not as hot anymore. She could not help shaking Huo Liancheng's hand and said angrily, Why are you so shameless? Huo Liancheng turned to look at her. How am I shameless? Just buy that kind of thing quietly. Why do you want it? Jian Yun bit her lower lip and glared at Huo Liancheng. She turned around and walked forward. This is not something shameful. Why do you want to buy it secretly? Huo Liancheng was tall and had long legs. He slowly followed Jian Yun and said with a smile, Then why did you say you wanted the biggest number? Jian Yun thought of the look in the shop assistant's eyes and felt uncomfortable all over. Am I wrong? Huo Liancheng put his hands in his pockets and raised his sword-like eyebrows. He asked with a wicked smile, Didn't you see it last night? You should know my measurements very well. Hey, shut up! Jian Yun suddenly felt a wave of heat rush to her head. She glared at Huo Liancheng. She was both embarrassed and angry. She was about to go crazy from anger. How could this guy be so shameless? He was still on the street and he just said these shameless words. Huo Liancheng looked at Jian Yun's embarrassed and angry look, but he felt that she was so vivid that he could not move his eyes away from her. Hey, you're still smiling. Jian Yun saw that people around her were looking at them. She was furious and ignored Huo Liancheng. She turned around and ran away. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Come, follow me to the hotel. Huo Liancheng walked forward and wrapped his arm around Jian Yun's slim waist. He gently coaxed her by her ear. What are you going to the hotel for? Jian Yun was not really angry. She was just not used to the flirting between the two of them and could not let go. Of course I'm going to use this. Huo Liancheng took out the set he bought from the convenience store from his pocket and waved it in front of Jian Yun's eyes. Jian Yun suddenly felt a flock of crows flying over her head. She supported her forehead and did not know how to describe her current mood. Huo Liancheng pretended not to see Jian Yun's depressed expression. He hugged her and coaxed her. Let's go, just use one. You wish? Jian Yun was not so moved by Huo Liancheng's sweet words. She wrinkled her nose and spat on him, brushing away his big hand. It was still daytime. She still had a lot of things to do and had no time to play with him. Didn't you like it too? Huo Liancheng didn't want to give up. Shut up. Jian Yun felt that she could not give Huo Liancheng a good look. She walked angrily towards the residential area. Don't follow me. Grandma and the others are having a competition tonight. I have to go to the activity center to watch them rehearse. I will also go and watch. Huo Liancheng stuck to Jian Yun like a dogskin plaster. Stay away from me, Jian Yun said. Don't let anyone see you. Jian Yun walked a few steps and pulled away from Huo Liancheng. Duer, why do I feel like you dislike me? Huo Liancheng was really depressed. He had everything he wanted, including his looks and wealth. As long as he wanted, he could have any kind of woman. However, he had a special affection for this girl, but she never cared about him. Even now that she had confirmed her feelings, she was still unwilling to get too close to him. This caused his male pride to be extremely hurt. How could I dare to dislike you, President Huo? Jian Yun saw Huo Liancheng had long legs and caught up with him in a few steps. She quickly ran forward again. Then let's announce our relationship. Huo Liancheng said casually. No. Jian Yun stopped when she heard him. She turned around and stared at Huo Liancheng. She said nervously, You can't announce it. Why? Huo Liancheng narrowed his eyes. Jian Yun also felt that her reaction was too big. She lowered her eyes and rolled her eyes. She still used the contract to explain to Huo Liancheng, You said you can't let others know about our relationship within a year. I regret it now. Huo Liancheng said calmly. Not now. Jian Yun felt her heart was in a mess. She really wanted to ask Huo Liancheng if the 1-year agreement was counted, but when the words reached the tip of her tongue, she still did not ask. Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng were looking at each other when they suddenly heard Guirong's voice behind them. Hey, young master, why are you and Xiaoyun together? Jian Yun turned her head and saw Guirong holding a bag of clothes in her hands. Clearly, she was going to send clothes to Granny Liao. She turned back to look at Huo Liancheng. Seeing that he was about to speak, she hurriedly rushed in front of him and said, Grandma Kui, we just met on the road. Mr. Guo said that he wanted to see Granny Liao rehearse, so I brought him. I see. Guirong did not doubt him and smiled. Then let's go together. This is the last rehearsal, and we are going to the stadium in the afternoon. I am already nervous. Jian Yun secretly glanced at Huo Liancheng. Huo Liancheng also looked at her. The moment their gazes met, it seemed like there was an electric current flowing through their hearts. Chapter 286. Who doesn't like women? Jian Yun only gave Huo Liancheng a glance and immediately shifted her gaze away. She did not dare to make it too obvious, afraid that Guirong would find out. Huo Liancheng really followed Jian Yun and Guirong to the activity center of the district. He watched a group of old men and old ladies change their clothes and rehearse enthusiastically. Of course, he mainly looked at Jian Yun. It was just that Jian Yun was busy guiding everyone and did not have time to bother with him. Huo Liancheng was very bored. Time quickly passed. At 11:30, it was time to eat. The old men and old ladies went back to their own homes to have lunch and take a nap to do the, Yo, President Huo actually has time to see me dance today. I'm really flattered. Granny Liao pulled Jian Yun to walk in front of Huo Liancheng. She had seen Huo Liancheng early in the morning, but she thought that her usually boring grandson, who only knew how to work, would not be able to stay for more than 3 minutes, so she did not come over to greet Huo Liancheng. But what surprised her was that Huo Liancheng actually stayed until the rehearsals ended. Because I have never seen such a beautiful old lady dancing before. Huo Liancheng put his arm around Granny Liao's shoulder, and his mouth seemed to be smeared with honey. His words made Granny Liao unable to close her mouth. You are the only one who knows how to talk. I'll reward you with eating a few more bowls at noon. Granny Liao lovingly patted Huo Liancheng, then pulled Jian Yun and said excitedly, Little Yun, Guirong cooked a lot of dishes today. Come with us and go home to eat. Granny Liao, no, Sister Z has already finished cooking. I'll go home to eat. Jian Yun hurriedly refused. She did not dare to go to Granny Liao's house anymore. Huo Liancheng was so bold. If he did something again, then it could not be hidden. Huo Liancheng turned his head and looked at Jian Yun from behind Granny Liao. Jian Yun pursed her lips and lowered her head to avoid his eyes. Granny Liao, is this your grandson? He is so handsome. The people who passed by had already noticed that there was someone like Huo Liancheng at the scene. He was too outstanding. Whether it was his looks or temperament, it was hard for people to not notice him. Granny Liao was very familiar with the people in the neighborhood. When she saw someone praising her grandson, the old lady was very happy. She proudly introduced him. Yes, my grandson came to watch my competition. Granny Liao, is your grandson married? If not, my daughter is not bad. She is beautiful and has a temperament. Do you want to introduce them? Someone impatiently wanted to introduce Huo Liancheng to his girlfriend. Yes. Haha, it's better not to introduce a girlfriend. My grandson doesn't like women. Granny Liao was also a character. The words she said shocked everyone to death. One sentence scared all the people who wanted to come over. The corner of Huo Liancheng's mouth twitched. He was speechless. Jian Yun could not help but cover her mouth and try her best to hold back her laughter. It's such a pity that you are so handsome and don't like women. The surrounding people who were interested in Huo Liancheng all revealed looks of pity. Let's go, let's go. Let's go back and rest. We have a competition tonight. Granny Liao waved her hand and chased everyone away like she was chasing away flies. She pulled Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng to the house. Xiao Yun, wait for me after the competition tonight. I have something to tell you. Granny Liao smiled and said to Jian Yun as she walked, I will tell you now to prevent you from forgetting when you are busy in the afternoon. Oh, okay. Jian Yun did not think too much and nodded her head in agreement. Liancheng, do you think Grandma is good to you? Granny Liao turned to Huo Liancheng again and smiled so much that her eyes narrowed. She gave Huo Liancheng a stupid idea. I only used one sentence to help you get rid of so many troubles. The next time you receive an interview, if any reporters ask you if you have a girlfriend, you will use this method to respond. I guarantee that no one will care about whether you have a woman or not in the future. Yes, so Grandma wants me to find you a male daughter-in-law, right? Huo Liancheng put his hands in his pockets and walked leisurely. I can barely accept a male daughter-in-law without a female daughter-in-law. Your grandma is not old-fashioned. Granny Liao squinted her eyes and smiled complacently. Okay, actually, I didn't say it out loud because I was afraid that you guys would object. Since Grandma is so open-minded, I have nothing to hide. Grandma, when the competition is over tonight, I will show you my boyfriend and let you palm your eyes. Huo Liancheng's expression was serious, as if he was speaking the truth. As he spoke, he glanced at Jian Yun from the corner of his eye. Jian Yun looked at the battle of wisdom and courage between the two of them and felt that it was very novel. She felt that Huo Liancheng really had many aspects that he did not show. Usually, when she saw him, he had a serious and cold look on his face. Now that she heard his nonsense, it was really interesting. This time, Granny Liao became nervous. She stopped walking, and the smile on her face could not be stopped. She looked at Huo Liancheng nervously. Liancheng, do you really have a boyfriend? Don't lie to Grandma. Grandma's little heart can't take it. Really? Huo Liancheng nodded. His eyes flashed with a mischievous smile, but his expression was very serious. I don't like women. I was afraid that you guys wouldn't be able to accept it, so I didn't say anything. No. Granny Liao saw that Huo Liancheng didn't seem to be lying. She was so scared that her expression changed. She jumped up and said angrily, I don't want to be nice to you. You don't like men. I don't want to see your boyfriend. If you dare to bring your boyfriend to see me, I will beat. But Grandma just said that I like men. It's okay. Huo Liancheng shrugged. Can't I joke? Granny Liao rolled her eyes. I can't. You must bring me a granddaughter-in-law before the end of this year. A woman. It must be a woman. Granny Liao kept emphasizing on Huo Liancheng's chest as she spoke. I'm hungry. Let's go home and eat. Huo Liancheng pursed his lips and continued walking forward, completely ignoring Granny Liao. You little rascal, stop right there. Granny Liao anxiously chased after him and was just about to continue speaking. Huo Liancheng extended his arm and hooked onto Granny Liao's shoulder. He immediately pulled the petite Granny Liao into his embrace. Grandma, I'm hungry. Granny Liao immediately became gentle and said repeatedly, Okay, let's go home and eat. As she said that, she turned her head and waved at Jian Yun. Little Yun, we were just joking. Don't look at how talented this little rascal of mine is. Actually, he was a bad person since he was young. Don't be fooled by his face. Jian Yun raised her eyebrows in surprise when she heard that. She subconsciously looked at Huo Liancheng. Why did she feel that Granny Liao's words had a deeper meaning? Grandma, is there anyone who calls his grandson like that? Huo Liancheng said speechlessly and gave Jian Yun a comforting look at the same time. Did I say anything wrong? Granny Liao looked at Huo Liancheng with a meaningful look. You have never let me rest easy since I was young. Now you have even made a man like matter. If your mother finds out about this... Ahem. Huo Liancheng suddenly coughed and interrupted Granny Liao at the right time. Chapter 287. Mutual Affection. Granny Liao seemed to have reacted as well. She should not have said these things in front of Jian Yun. She immediately started to laugh. I am old. I have a lot to talk about. All right, let's not talk anymore. Let's go home and eat. Little Yun, let's go together? Jianyun saw that they had already arrived in front of the elevator. She shook her head and pursed her lips into a smile. Thank you, Grandma. It's better not to. I won't disturb the two of you. Okay. Granny Liao did not insist. She seemed to have something on her mind. She did not say anything after entering the elevator. She kept her head down and stood near the door. Hu Liancheng stood behind Granny Liao. Jianyun was originally standing in the innermost part, but Hu Liancheng suddenly changed direction and stood in front of her. He was tall and big with wide shoulders and long legs. He just happened to be in between her and Granny Liao. She looked up and saw Hu Liancheng with one hand behind his back and crooked his finger at her. Jianyun pursed her lips and quietly placed her hand in his palm. Hu Liancheng immediately held Jianyun's hand. His hand was very big, and his palm was wide. His fingers were long and slender. Jianyun always knew that Hu Liancheng's hand was very beautiful. This was not the first time they held hands like this. However, in this kind of environment, she crossed her fingers and felt the warmth of his palm. Her heart could not help but pound wildly. This was the feeling of being moved. It was just that the elevator arrived very quickly. The moment the elevator door opened, Jianyun and Hu Liancheng released each other's hands very tacitly. For a moment, Jianyun actually had a feeling of disappointment. The three mermaids walked out of the elevator in a row. Before Granny Liao entered the house, she turned her head and told Jianyun, "Little Yun, remember to remind me after the competition tonight. I'm afraid I will forget when the time comes." Okay, Granny Liao. Jianyun squinted her eyes and smiled. She quickly glanced at Hu Liancheng but found that he was also looking at her. His deep eyes and hot eyes seemed to see no one but her. Jianyun's face suddenly became hot and she quickly lowered her head. Her heart was beating wildly again and she could not help but curse in her heart. Damn it, why does it feel like he is stealing love? Until entering the door, Jianyun still could not cool down her face. Yanzi was coming out of the kitchen and seeing her like this, she teased and teased again. After dinner, Jianyun lay on the bed and played with her phone. Hu Liancheng had sent her a message a minute ago. Grandma is so excited that she can't sleep. I want to go to the hotel to sleep. You stay with me? It would be strange if Jianyun did not understand such a naked invitation. She did not want to go to the hotel with him in broad daylight to do unspeakable things. So she pretended that she did not see the message and quickly turned off her phone to take a nap. However, how could Jianyun, who had been disturbed in the Heart Lake, fall asleep? She lay on the bed, tossing and turning, her mind constantly replaying Hu Liancheng's words in the morning in the park. Since the first time Hu Liancheng approached her, Jianyun had suspected his purpose, but she had never thought that the truth would be like this. Back then, she had saved him out of goodwill, so he had been thinking about her for many years. Now he had come to repay her? But why did this plot feel like Shushan saved White Snake and White Snake returned the favor? However, her gender had changed. She was Shushan and Hu Liancheng was the white wife? Immediately, Jianyun thought of Hu Liancheng, dressed like a white lady, waiting for her to return in 1,000 years. No, she couldn't think about it anymore. If she kept thinking about it, she would really go crazy. Jianyun covered her face. She was really shocked by her wild imagination, but at the same time, she wanted to laugh. If the usually cold and narcissistic Uncle Huo knew that he was the image of Lady White in her heart, she did not know what kind of expression he would have. Jianyun did not know when she fell asleep. When she woke up, she looked at the time. It was already past 2 o'clock, and she was no longer sleepy. When she got up, the first thing she did was to turn on her phone. Sure enough, a series of text messages exploded going. However, the relationship between the two was only getting better. Hu Liancheng was not as overbearing as Adelit. Regarding Jianyun's lack of cooperation, he only expressed his deep condemnation, depression, and sadness of being ignored. Jianyun did not reply to the text message and directly dialed it. The phone rang and was picked up. Bad girl, you did it on purpose. Hu Liancheng expressed his dissatisfaction as soon as he opened his mouth. On purpose? I went to sleep after dinner. I just saw your message. Jianyun pretended not to understand and quickly changed the topic. Where are you? Why are you so noisy? I was dragged to the community hall by Grandma. A bunch of old people and old ladies are making me so noisy, Hu Liancheng said. Even though they were separated by the phone line and far away, Jianyun could imagine Hu Liancheng at this moment. He must be very impatient. She couldn't help but want to laugh. When are you coming? Hu Liancheng asked again. Yes, I'll be there in a while. Jianyun was the instructor of Granny Liao's team and Yanzi was also a member of the square dance team. However, she had sprained her ankle 2 days ago, so she could not participate in the competition. However, she still had to go and watch. They would be leaving soon. Accompany me tonight. Hu Liancheng did not beat around the bush and invited her directly. Jianyun's heart jumped and she vaguely said, let's talk about it tonight. I'll wait for you. Hu Liancheng's heart began to stir when he thought about the taste of soul corrosion last night. He had endured it for so long, and now he was like a beast that opened its door. He just wanted to eat it. He really could not wait for a moment. Yes, Sister Z has come to call me. I need to go and clean up. That's it. Bye. Jinyun did not know why she suddenly felt scared. She did not dare to agree to Huo Liancheng directly. She could only find an excuse to hang up the phone. Why is your face so red when you make a phone call? Yanzi came over to call Jinyun, but found that Jinyun's face was red. She could not help teasing again. Is it your family's handsome Huo who is flirting with you again? Sister Z, why do I feel a little scared? Jinyun held her chest and said with a frown. What are you afraid of? Afraid that he will lie to you or that he will eat you? Yanzi asked. Jinyun was conflicted and did not know what to say. Was it last night? Yanzi thought carefully. Seeing Jinyun's expression, she knew that what she was thinking was definitely something that could not be told. So she smiled and said, Baby, the most important thing about a man and a woman's love is that the two of you are in love. Since the two of you are in love, don't think about resisting. You must first immerse yourself and then enjoy. You want to enjoy it? Jinyun curled her lips. She really did not have the nerve to say the rest of her words. Let's go. Jinyun was not open to the extent of being able to freely discuss the matter of the boudoir with her best friend. She was afraid that Yanzi would ask again, so she could only quickly get up and change her clothes. She picked up the bag and pulled Yanzi away. Tonight, the square dance competition was held in the big auditorium of the New North District. It was not even 4 o'clock when the auditorium was already full of people. Once there were more people, it would be noisy. But among so many people, Jianyun actually saw Huo Liancheng, who was sitting in the front seat in the middle with a glance. Chapter 288. Am I that bad? Huo Liancheng was really dazzling. Even though he was sitting there with a cold face, there were still people surrounding him. Of course, they were all women. However, those people were clearly intimidated by his cold face. Although they wanted to approach him and hit on him, they all hesitated. However, when they saw the red faces of those women taking pictures of Huo Liancheng with their phones, it was clear that these women were all enchanted by President Huo. Jianyun, look, your handsome Huo really has the ability to attract peach blossoms. Yanzi poked Jianyun with her elbow and teased with a smile. Looks like you have to add a skill to chase away women in the future. Jianyun helplessly sighed. With the current situation, she definitely could not go and look for Huo Liancheng. She could only walk towards the few rows Granny Liao and the others were sitting in. Huo Liancheng seemed to have a mutual understanding. At this time, he suddenly turned his head to look behind and saw Jianyun all of a sudden. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he put down his arms that he had been hugging. His tall body leaned forward as if he was preparing to get up. Jianyun shook her head at him and signaled with her eyes that there were too many people here. It was better not to come into contact with them. Huo Liancheng understood Jianyun's rejection. The smile that had just appeared on the corner of his mouth froze on his face. His pretty eyes also regained their coldness and sternness. He glared fiercely at Jianyun. Jianyun shrunk her neck back. She pretended not to see Huo Liancheng's unhappy expression. She lowered her head and walked quickly to Granny Liao and the others. She sat down with a fart. Immediately, Jianyun noticed that her phone rang. She took out her phone from her bag and saw that it was indeed from Huo Liancheng. I'm that bad. Huo Liancheng's voice was cold and filled with anger. There are too many people here. Many people are taking pictures of you with their phones. I will definitely be taken. What if it spreads online? Jianyun carefully explained. She did not know what Huo Liancheng was thinking. If their relationship was made public, it would not benefit either him or her. Huo Liancheng seemed to be grinding his teeth in anger. You don't want our relationship to be made public just like that? Aren't you afraid? Jianyun asked curiously. Didn't you say you can't let your family know? Damn it. Huo Liancheng hung up the phone. He really wanted to slap himself twice now. The excuse he made up earlier had now become Jianyun's weapon to attack him, even though he admitted that what she said was reasonable. But to him, what he wanted to do was not for those old fogies of Huo family to criticize, let alone his marriage. It was fine if he did not fall in love with anyone. Marrying anyone was just a decoration in the family. But now that his heart belonged to someone, he would never allow such a thing to happen again. Jianyun heard that there was no sound from the other side and took off her phone to take a look. Only then did she realize that the phone had been hung up. She could not help but frown. Little Yun, who are you calling? Granny Liao's voice suddenly sounded by her ear. Jianyun suddenly looked up and found Granny Liao sitting beside her. Jianyun's heart immediately beat wildly because she did not know if Granny Liao had heard what she just said. Granny Liao? Jianyun pursed her lips and a trace of panic flashed in the corner of her eyes. What is it? Granny Liao smiled and her expression was normal. No, nothing. Jianyun quickly lowered her eyes to cover her thoughts. When she looked up again, she had already regained her composure. Granny Liao, how many of us are going on stage? Yes, there are a total of 12 teams. We are the 8th team. Granny Liao had already changed into her dancing attire. She was in good spirits and had a special temperament. She was very dignified and generous, so she was chosen to be the lead dancer in the front row. Granny Liao, you can do it. Everyone, you can do it. Jinyun clenched her fists and said with a smile. All the best. The group of old men and old ladies behind Granny Liao all clenched their fists and acted as if they were cheering. Although they had only been together for 10 days, Jian Yun was already familiar with these old people. She still liked these old people who were in good spirits. All right, it's our turn to put on makeup. The competition starts at 6:30. There are still many teams waiting to put on makeup. We have to quickly. Someone came over and called Granny Liao and the others to put on makeup. Xiaoyun, go to Liancheng's side and sit with him. There are too many people here. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long and will leave. When Granny Liao got up, she suddenly grabbed Jian Yun's hand and walked towards where Huo Liancheng was. When Jian Yun heard this, her hands trembled in fear. Granny Liao turned back to look at her and asked lovingly, "What's wrong?" "Granny Liao, there are so many women over there. I don't want to be watched." Jian Yun's heart was beating wildly, but she did not dare to show it on her face. She only pretended to be conflicted and said, "Haha, what does that matter? There will be many opportunities to be watched in the future. You need to get used to it first." Granny Liao blinked and said with a smile. Jian Yun's eyes flashed with suspicion. She carefully observed Granny Liao's expression and very much suspected that she knew something. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Granny Liao wiped her face and smiled maliciously. At this moment, she had already brought Jian Yun to Huo Liancheng's side. She pressed her down on the chair next to Huo Liancheng and said to Huo Liancheng, "Liancheng, I want little Yun to talk to you. Don't go. Grandma still has something important to talk to you about tonight." "What is it? Good or bad?" Huo Liancheng's expression was still very bad. He did not look at Jian Yun. He was as cold as if she was a stranger. "Of course it is good." Granny Liao squinted her eyes and smiled like a fox. After she finished speaking, she turned around to leave. She did not take 2 steps and turned to look at Jian Yun. The corner of her mouth curved. "Oh right, little Yun, don't call Granny Liao from now on. You are too polite. Just follow Liancheng and call her grandma." Jian Yun's scalp was numb. She watched Granny Liao walk away and then lowered her voice to ask Huo Liancheng, "Did your grandma discover something?" "Found what?" Huo Liancheng leaned there with his arms crossed. His face was cold and his voice was even colder. "Our relationship," he asked. "Otherwise, why would she suddenly want me to follow you and call her grandma?" "She wants me to sit here." Jian Yun's heart was still beating wildly. Her face was red and white. Clearly, she was shocked. "Do we have anything to do with each other?" Huo Liancheng turned his head to look at Jian Yun. A cold and malicious light flashed in his eyes. "No," Jian Yun said. Jian Yun saw Huo Liancheng's expression and knew that he was suffering from another illness. She did not want to use her hot face to touch him, so she turned her head and did not look at him anymore. However, the surrounding crowd of onlookers kept pointing their phones at Huo Liancheng, making Jian Yun feel uncomfortable. She immediately stood up and left. "Where are you going?" Huo Liancheng grabbed Jian Yun's hand. "It's not comfortable sitting here. Let's change seats." Jian Yun quickly shook off Huo Liancheng's hand. Chapter 289, He's Gone Crazy Again. Jian Yun was currently in the spectator area, or the VIP area. Tonight's competition was all based on tickets. Her tickets were with Yanzi. She would rather sit in a corner with Yanzi than endure Huo Liancheng's cold face. When Huo Liancheng heard this, he let go of Jian Yun's hand. Jian Yun was angry that he had a cold face towards her, and ignored him. She directly left the area in the middle and walked towards Yanzi's direction. However, Jian Yun had just found a seat and found that Yanzi's expression was not right. She turned her head and saw someone beside her. It was Huo Liancheng. He actually followed her. "What are you doing here?" Jian Yun looked around. The women who originally surrounded Huo Liancheng also followed. Many people stared at her with a strange expression. "It's not comfortable sitting there. Change your seat." Huo Liancheng looked cold. He looked straight ahead and said with his photographic eyes. Jian Yun was speechless. She did not want to talk to Huo Liancheng, so she got up and walked around Yanzi to sit in the innermost seat. It was still early, so Jian Yun took out her phone to play games. Huo Liancheng sat at the side and did not speak. The two of them just kept silent, which made Yanzi, who was sitting in the middle, very embarrassed. She looked around and suddenly stood up and said to Jian Yun, "Jian Yun, I see someone familiar. Go and have a talk. Come back later." How could Jian Yun not know that Yanzi was looking for an excuse to leave? She also stood up. "I will go with you." "Don't." Yanzi quickly waved her hand and pushed Jian Yun to sit down. Huo Liancheng had already stood up to make way for her, and Yanzi immediately ran away. Once Yanzi left, only Jian Yun and Huo Liancheng were left in this row of seats. Although there were a few seats between them, Jian Yun still felt the aura coming from Huo Liancheng. Jian Yun's heart suddenly started to beat faster. At this time, she was no longer in the mood to play games. Just as she was about to put her phone into her bag, Jian Yun found that someone had sent her a WeChat message. She opened it and saw that it was from Wu Wenjing. It was only a short cut. One sentence. "Jian Yun, give me a call. There is an urgent matter." Jian Yun frowned. What business would Wu Wenjing have with her at this time? There were too many people in the activity center, and it was too noisy. It was not a place to talk. Jian Yun got up and planned to go out. If she stayed here any longer, she felt that she was not frozen to death by Huo Liancheng's cold air. She would also be drowned by his unique male hormones. Excuse me, I will go out. Jianyun walked to Huo Liancheng's side, but was blocked by his long legs. Huo Liancheng looked up at Jianyun. Jianyun's face was cold. He then slowly retracted his long legs, but his eyes were fixed on Jianyun's face. Jianyun walked past Huo Liancheng and waited until she was out of the activity center. She breathed in the fresh air outside and felt much more comfortable. The phone rang and Wu Wenjing quickly picked it up. Hello, Jianyun, when are you coming back? What's wrong? Jianyun heard Wu Wenjing's tone. Something was not right. She could not help but ask, did something happen? Sigh, something did indeed happen. Wu Wenjing sighed. Quickly come back. I cannot bear it alone. What exactly happened? Jianyun also became nervous when she heard that. It's still Yanyan. She fell out with her mother-in-law and triggered the fetal gas. She is now hospitalized for the pregnancy. Wu Wenjing said as she became angry. That old hag is really despicable. Just because Qindong came back from a business trip, she did not go and kowtow to her first, but went back to her own house to accompany Yanyan. The old hag felt that her status as a queen had been shaken, and she was so angry that she cried and argued at home. She kept arguing and said that why is there such a mother? Jianyun felt very speechless, but then she asked nervously, what about Yanyan? How is Yanyan now? She is temporarily fine. Yanyan is too angry, so there is the possibility of a premature abortion. The doctor said that she needs to stay in bed to protect the pregnancy and cannot move around. Wu Wenjing let out a breath and very gloomily asked, Jianyun, you have gone out for too long. It is time to come back. Yes. Jianyun was still thinking about Luo Yanyan's matter. She planned to call Luo Yanyan later and ask her about her situation. She was really worried. Right, Shu Haiyang has been looking for me many times these days. He asked me where you were, and asked me to look for you. I didn't respond to him. Wu Wenjing said again. Jianyun suddenly heard Shu Haiyang's name. Her calm heart immediately rippled. She was a little irritated. Now that she thought of Shu Haiyang's face, it made her feel disgusted. What face does he have to come to me? Jianyun's voice turned cold. She had told Wu Wenjing what had happened before. He must have done something wrong and felt uneasy. He wanted to ask for your forgiveness. Wu Wenjing snorted. Jianyun, this kind of man is really the biggest scum. Only Lin Lanlan is most suitable for him. Oh right, I almost forgot to tell you that Lin Lanlan has also entered the Mings. What? Lin Lanlan entered the Mings? Jianyun's brows raised and her voice was raised. That's right. Just a few days ago, she entered the Mings. A fool who didn't even get into a university has the face to call himself an elite. Wu Wenjing said in disdain. Jianyun wanted to ask again, but suddenly felt her vision darken. She looked up and saw that Huo Liancheng had come out of nowhere. He was standing in front of her and watching her make the call. Wu Wenjing, I have something to do now. I don't want to talk to you anymore. We'll talk again tonight. Jianyun anxiously greeted Wu Wenjing and hung up the phone. Huo Liancheng looked down at Jianyun. Jianyun also looked at him. Is something the matter? If there is nothing else, I will leave. Huo Liancheng grabbed Jianyun's arm and pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her ear and asked in a low voice, Are you angry? No. Jianyun was scalded by Huo Liancheng's hot breath and her ear was itchy from his bite. She wanted to push him away. Then why are you ignoring me? Huo Liancheng did not intend to let go of Jianyun. You ignored me first. Jianyun looked around. She had just come out to make a phone call and specially chose a remote corner. No one passed by. Huo Liancheng directly kissed her again. It was an incomparably hot kiss. After a long time, Huo Liancheng let go of Jianyun. Jianyun's face was already so red that it could drip blood. She grabbed Huo Liancheng's clothes on his chest with both hands and said in a low voice, Can you not be so eccentric every time? How can I be so weird? Huo Liancheng was dissatisfied. I am so handsome and handsome. When Jianyun heard that, the corners of her mouth twitched. Her long eyelashes lifted. She looked at him and said speechlessly, That's why there are so many women surrounding you at all times. Are you jealous? Huo Liancheng raised his eyebrows and smiled. Then I'll tell them that I'm married and tell them to stay away from me. Jianyun sighed. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Let me ask you something. What is it? Huo Liancheng hugged Jianyun and kept caressing her slim waist. Yes, that. Jianyun hesitated to say, Lin Lanlan also entered the Mings? Chapter 290, I love you too. Lin Lanlan has also entered the Mings? Jianyun hesitated and asked, Do you know about this? Huo Liancheng nodded. Jianyun's head. Do you think I have nothing to do all day long? There are so many changes in Ming's personnel every day. How would I have time to care about this? Of course, other than you. Jianyun thought it made sense. Huo Liancheng was the CEO, and he had a lot of work to do every day. Not only did he have to take care of the Mings, but he also had to manage his own company. At home, she had witnessed him having a conference call with the higher-ups of the Huos every night. The video conference was late, and there was a change in personnel. Unless he paid special attention to Wu Wenjing said, Lin Lanlan also entered the Mings. I keep feeling that she has other motives. Jianyun said. Lin Rong was still being detained until now. It was said that the evidence was almost collected, and the court hearing would be held soon. However, her son was still escaping and was not caught. In this kind of situation, Lin Lanlan actually did not take action. With Jianyun's understanding of her, this did not conform to her style. Do you hate her very much? Then don't let her in. Huo Liancheng looked indifferent. He had no impression of Lin Lanlan. But, Jianyun rolled her eyes, I really want to know what she wants to do. Huo Liancheng was speechless. Do you know that curiosity will kill the cat? Jianyun pouted. I'm just joking. I don't want to have any interaction with her. It's just that. Just what? Huo Liancheng touched Jianyun's body with his hands and asked casually. Jianyun slapped Huo Liancheng's hand away. I guess she's after you. She wants all my things. If that's the case, I can't resign now. Why do you want to resign? Huo Liancheng frowned and said discontentedly. At the same time, he was secretly happy in his heart because this girl finally had possessiveness towards him. She treated him as her everything and did not want others to touch her. He had waited for this day for far too long. If you don't resign, are you still waiting to be bullied by you? Jianyun rolled her eyes at Huo Liancheng. We agreed not to talk about the past. Huo Liancheng's handsome face fell. Do you still want to deny it? Jianyun actually did not completely let go of it. It was not because she was petty and held grudges. Perhaps it was because she cared too much that she took it so seriously. Admit it. Huo Liancheng wrapped his arm around Jianyun. Carefully looking at her expression, he coaxed her with a cheeky smile. But I admit my mistake too. Duoer, you can't always hold on to a small tail and not let go. And let's talk about how you plan on defending your rights to me, okay? What about that, Lin? What if she came for me? If she seduced me, I wouldn't waver. I don't care about other women except you, but I'm so fragrant. What if she uses force against me and I can't resist? So you must not resign. You must come back and protect me. As he spoke, Huo Liancheng deliberately pretended to be weak. He lowered his head and rubbed it against Jianyun's shoulder. Hey, that's enough of you. Jianyun did not know whether to laugh or cry at Huo Liancheng's words. She tried hard to push him away and said speechlessly, a lover who can be hooked is not a real lover. Huo Liancheng's eyes lit up. Baby, are you telling me that you also love me? Jianyun's face turned red when she heard him call her baby. Furthermore, she was still a little reserved and was too embarrassed to say that word. So she lowered her head and wanted to leave. She said, Can you not be so numb? It doesn't match your image. I am more used to the cold and aloof you. Duo-er, be good. Tell me those 3 words. Huo Liancheng's heart was itching. He tried his best to coax Jianyun to say that she loved him. We'll talk about it in the future. Jianyun could not say it no matter what. Her face was so red that it could drip blood. Huo Liancheng did not force Jianyun. Her purity had made him very excited. Now that he was sure that her heart was on him, he was very satisfied. Then after watching the competition tonight, I will wait for you. N. How could Jianyun not know the meaning of Huo Liancheng's words? She lowered her head and replied shyly like a mosquito humming. Duer, I love you. Huo Liancheng hugged Jianyun and said softly in her ear, I've been looking for you for 6 years and finally waited for this day. I'm really very happy. At this moment, Jianyun's heart was beating wildly like a deer. A sweet feeling that she had never felt before filled her heart. But her mouth was really clumsy and she did not know what to say in response. She could only stand on her tiptoes and suddenly kiss Huo Liancheng's lips. Me too, Jianyun muttered. This sound was too soft and she could not hear it clearly herself. However, Huo Liancheng heard it. His eyes were shockingly bright and he was caught off guard. He fiercely kissed Jianyun once again. When the 2 of them returned to the auditorium in the activity center, Granny Liao and the others were already prepared to go up. Yanzi also returned to her seat. Regarding Jianyun going out for so long, she only winked ambiguously and knew very well that she did not ask anything. In order to avoid suspicion, Jianyun still sat in the innermost seat. Huo Liancheng sat outside, and Yanzi was in the middle. Fortunately, the lights had dimmed. Yanzi only thought that she did not exist and pretended not to see the 2's brows. She did not feel so awkward. The square dance competition was very exciting. The people participating in the competition were all the uncles and mothers of the various districts. These elderly people, who were on average in their 50s or 60s, were full of vigor and vigor. They were not any weaker than those young people. In addition, the square dance songs were all familiar and fast songs. After the entire competition, the atmosphere in the center of the event was very high. In the end, Granny Liao led the Jade Garden District's Empress Heaven Queen Earth dance team and won 3rd place. Second prize, this result was already very good and everyone was very happy. After the award, the audience began to disperse. Granny Liao and a group of old friends took photos and chatted. It was not easy for them to get out. Seeing Jianyun waiting for her, she immediately waved happily. Little Yun, come over. At that time, Jianyun, Huo Liancheng, Yanzi, and a few others were standing outside the hall of the activity center. Jianyun noticed that when Granny Liao came out, there was someone beside her. It was a man and also a handsome man. She even knew this man. Granny Liao had already started to introduce him. Little Yun, come quickly. Let me introduce you. This is my sister's grandson, Ah Zhe. He is 29 years old this year. He graduated from Harvard and is now Liancheng's assistant. His annual salary is unknown, but his family background is not bad. Although he is not as handsome as my family, he is still the last flower in history. Granny Liao, you're not going to introduce me to someone, right? The more Jianyan heard, the more she felt that something was not right. She could not help but interrupt Granny Liao. That's right, my family's little rascal is not willing to get married. I also see that you are really pleasing to the eye. Come, the two of you quickly go and chat. Granny Liao smiled very happily.